was quite an introduction. Thank you very much. Well, speaking of introductions, I want to talk a little bit about introductions. Like, why? Why do we have introductions in the first place? And we're all designers, so you may think, well, the right answer is empathy, right? Because empathy is at the core of what design is all about. User-centered design is all about empathy. I don't really believe that empathy is why we do introductions. I think the most common sense answer is to provide some sort of credibility. So you can see like certain indications of credibility in these images. This astronomer here, he's all dressed up in the three-piece suit. He's at the podium. He's got notes. Prime Minister over there, she's got, you know, the Prime Minister, whatever it is. I don't know what that is. So I'm from Frog, so is that enough? Is that enough credibility in your eyes, just to say like I'm from Frog? What if I were to say that I've been at Frog for 4 years? Does that make it more credible? Well, what if I were to say that I've been doing this kind of work for the last 20 years? Does that make a difference? I've seen a lot of different things in my career. What was happening 20 years ago in 1996? Maybe some of you were very, very small or even not alive. Is it enough to say that I was invited to be up here on stage and I'm up on stage? Is that enough to establish credibility? Well, let's go back to introductions a little bit. Why do we have them? Break the ice, remove some of the awkwardness, provide some social currency around things that we can talk about. It helps to get going on a conversational arc. The conversational arcs are very much like story arcs. This one is one that we all recognize. At Frog, one of the things that we do is DR, design research. I'm sure you're aware of this. One of the things that we do is we design how we have conversations with our participants. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of an arc of an interview. It follows very much like an arc of a story. So at the beginning, you start off with something that is shared, something that is low risk, something that is like talking about the weather, talking about traffic, talking about, you know, how you're feeling right now. These are low risk and everybody has shared interest in them, so it's easy to talk about. So then you can move on to things that are well known, asking the participant to say where they're from, what do they do, what's their name, asking them questions that they know the answer to. Makes it easy. Then we get into something that's a little bit more difficult, recall. Tell me a story. Tell me about a time when you were doing this, how did you feel? It's a little bit more involved. It's a little more high stakes, but it's not as high stakes as the last piece. This is the discover and create. This is where we ask them to think laterally. We ask them to think and do things that they're generally not doing. We use design activities to help them. But by the time that they're here, they've gone through all of that ramp up. Hopefully we've established some rapport with them. And so they're okay with it, and they provide us fantastic insights. And after that, it's affirmation. Thank you very much. You did a great job. What you told me was really illuminating. That was perfect. Why else? Why else do we do introductions? I really believe that a lot of it is about identification. So these two guys here mirroring one another. It's all about trying to find your tribe. Are you in this person's tribe? Is that person in my tribe? If yes, hey, you're feeling good. You're probably going to be giving that person the benefit of the doubt. You're probably going to be prone to agree with that person. We're together. And what if you're not? If you're not in the same tribe, then you're most likely to say, like, I'm going to look for faults. What was wrong? What wasn't good enough? Be very skeptical, not believing. So we're all from various different tribes, many tribes. I'm from the tribe of Seattle. I'm also from the tribe of being a parent. These are my two boys. I'm a tribe of Happily married for a very long time to my wife, Lisa. Yay. She is not happy about that. So how do you feel about me now? Do you like me more? Do you like me less? Am I in your tribe? Are you in my tribe? What if I were to tell you that I'm a big metalhead? What if I were to tell you not only am I a big metalhead, I'm a death metalhead. And I like to mosh. And I've been moshing for 30 years. Do you like me more? Or do you like me less? So my advice here, and really what I think my role here today is to provide some advice, some suggestions, some considerations. So one of them is switching modes. When you're in these different positions and you're hearing somebody, try to put on different masks, different personas. Say, oh, I am now of this person's tribe. See how you feel then. Then take that mask off, put on another one. I'm not of that person's tribe. What do you learn from that? So let's talk about switching modes a little bit more. Let's do a little imagination game. So let's imagine that these two people are on the beach. Now what I want you to do in your heads is hear what they might be saying to each other and what they might be hoping for in the context of this is a couple on vacation. Well, what if we change that a little bit? What if it's not a couple on vacation, they're a couple on a date? Now what are they saying to one another? Now how have their hopes changed? Well, what if we change it a little bit more? They're on a first date after meeting online. How does that change things? So now let's change it a lot more. What if I were to tell you, instead of having a couple on a first date, that this is my mother, and this is my uncle, and they're spreading the ashes of my grandmother in the ocean? It changes how we feel about something. There have been scientific studies, psych studies, that have said, if you say, just simply saying, I am a 7-year-old, you will be more creative. Kind of crazy, but true. The study was they took 2 different groups of people, had them do some work, did some evaluation on what kind of creativity output they had. One group, they said, you are 7-year-olds. So just a little act like that can make a difference in your outcomes. So I'm going to go on to some other advice. Everybody in here is interested in getting jobs in the UX field, design field, one of those fields. We at Frog, we see tons of portfolios. There's been surely some discussion yesterday and today about portfolios. One thing I will say is your portfolios must tell stories. There was some good talk about stories earlier today. They must tell stories. Second little tidbit, design for mobile is dead. And I think we heard a lot of that today. And what I mean by that is, when we're designing for mobile, that means if you're designing for a small screen, that's something that's been done. Those design problems, more or less, most of those design problems have been identified and solved. Don't spend your time and your energy working on these problems. Spend your time and energy on the other things. Internet of Things, convergence of digital, physical, and spaces, big data, ubiquitous sensors, VR. These are things that you should be spending your time on, not this. It's a moment of serenity. If you have not read this book, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, you must read this book. I will say no more. So a little bit more, this should be familiar with everybody, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We can see the needs on the bottom, the biological and psychological and physiological safety needs. And at the top, self-actualization and transcendence, helping other people out. I was looking at a report about the forest industry in Europe in 2020, created by the UN, and I came across this diagram, which I love just for its aesthetic value. But what it does is it takes the hierarchy of needs and it maps it across per capita GDP, so in other words, how much money people have, and the types of possessions that they buy. And so what we see is people who are having less money spend more of their money on possessions that are around food, shelter, security. If you go to the other end, people are spending more of their money and their time on things like the higher level needs, the self-awareness. So we can use this as a model when we talk about the arc of our careers in the design field. So if we were to change the vertices just a little bit, so lengthen career, and then your energy. What do you spend your time thinking about, working on? And we can see that the same pattern emerges, that as you go through your career, you start off thinking about more basic, and you end up in more transcendental. I'll break this down a little bit more. In the early stages, you're really concerned about getting a job, making some hard skills, starting your networks. As you move through your career, you shift into other kinds of questions. What things do I like to do? What things can I do? Who do I like to work with? And then later in your career, you start to really focus on, am I making a difference? I fortunately happen to be over on the other end of the spectrum. So my advice to you today, what I would ask of you today, is take that other side, that transcendent side, and pull it in. Don't wait. Do that now. Do that at every stage of what you're working on. So, what do I mean by make a difference? I have some examples. The most obvious one I think comes to mind is working in healthcare or working with Amnesty International and making a difference in Syria. It's very powerful. This is great. Working in healthcare is really illuminating. It is fulfilling. But unfortunately, a lot of the work that we do isn't really in healthcare. It doesn't have direct impact on people's health. Because most of the money that goes into the companies that pay our salaries are paid by big companies and enterprises. So a while back, at Frog, I was asked to be on a program with a very large company, and they wanted to do enterprise software. How did I react? Ugh. Enterprise software. Ugh. We started going into some mode switching again. And this kind, looking at the people that you know in your networks. So if you are at this center, you know tons of people. You have your teammates, you have the other people in your organization, you've got your client, your stakeholders, the people who are going to build whatever you're designing, the end users, the people that they live with, your friends, family, neighbors. There's tons of people in your networks. You can use those thinkings to try to shift what you're focusing on. So in this particular case, what we did is we did some design research. We went around the country. We talked with people about their use of this enterprise software suite. What we found was they really hated it. Surprise. We found it wasn't good, it had usability problems, but we also found that there were several people like Heath. Now Heath was a guy who everybody went to when they had trouble. I don't know how this works, I can't make it do this. What do I do? Well, Heath knew all the answers. He's like the master of the skeleton key ring. He was able to spend most of his time helping other people fix their problems with the software. Well, we found a lot of these Heath folks. They were very nice. They wanted to give their time to other people, but they also wanted to do their jobs. So our job became to free Heath. That became our motto. We knew that if we could free Heath, we're unlocking value across many, many people. When you're looking at this kind of thing, be cognizant of the scale as well. You make a little bit of change, but it affects hundreds of thousands of people. That's a big deal. This is Frog. When you are part of a group that is a family, being part of something bigger than yourself, that is a rare and fragile moment. Another group to look at is your project team. How can you change your project team so that even if you're working on something like software, enterprise software that may not be intrinsically, obviously interesting, what can you do with your team? One thing that we've done is thought like, okay, what if we were performing a bank heist? How would that change things? On another project, one thing we did was, well, we decided that we were going to be making a movie. I'm the director, you're the script writer, you're the gaffer. And not only was it a lot of fun, it was very effective. What's over there on the left, those are our actual wireframes that we delivered to the client. They're obviously dialogue scripts, but they function as wireframes. Moving into other places that scare you, push you, so you learn, helps that transcendental moment as well. For me, teaching. I'm a huge introvert. Any introverts in the room? Yeah, it scares the crap out of me to be up here. But I tell you what, I love it. It's great. So this is my last piece of advice for you. As you're going through your career, as you're taking on new projects, moving to new companies, spend time to be a little bit intentional and fiddle and tinker with all the knobs and tubes that you can to amp up the transcendental aspect of what you do. When you get to be someone like me and my age, you'll be really happy you did. Thank you.